Welcome to FSMA Compliance in Feed Mills, a resource for small to medium-sized feed mills in the state of South Carolina to help them comply with the Preventive Controls for Animal Food rule. This presentation is focused on Does FSMA Impact Me? It is intended to help feed mills and ingredient manufacturers in the state better understand if they must comply with the Food Safety Modernization Act, or FSMA, and if so, what that rule requires of them. Feed and ingredient manufacturers have three primary requirements from the Preventive Controls for Animal Food rule of the Food Safety Modernization Act. The first is that they must train people within their facility on the appropriate food safety requirements. Second, they must follow current good manufacturing practice, or CGMP, requirements. Third is that they must establish and implement a food safety system, which is communicated in a written food safety plan. This requires at least a hazard analysis, and if necessary, a plan to control any significant hazards that may occur within the facility. To better understand, does FSMA impact me, there are some initial questions to answer. First, do you register your facility in accordance with the Bioterrorism Act? If yes, then FSMA impacts you. Maybe you don't currently register your facility, but you don't know if you're supposed to. To help you understand if you should register with the Bioterrorism Act and thereby must comply with FSMA, here are some additional questions. Do you grind grain, mix ingredients, or otherwise manufacture or process items that are fed to animals that you don't personally care for each day? If yes, then you most likely must register and comply with the Food Safety Modernization Act requirements. There are exemptions to the rule, and very small facilities may be required to comply with the rule but not have to do all parts of it. Farms are generally exempt, but as we will describe later, there is a very definition of what a farm is according to the rule. So some of our South Carolina farmers and ranchers may still need to comply with this rule. Some examples of activities that are impacted by FSMA include the selling of ground corn that you ground or cracked yourself. The use of a hammer mill or roller mill constitutes processing. The selling of feed that you formulated and mixed, custom mixing or blending to a customer's specifications, providing feed to a contract grower, or regularly making feed for a neighbor's livestock, poultry, or other animals. If you do any of these activities, then you must comply with FSMA. Not complying is considered a prohibited act and is a violation of federal law. If any of these are yes, you must comply with FSMA. But what if? At this point, there are typically a lot of questions. Specific questions regarding a facility's obligations, such as if they only do this once in a while, or if the facility does this instead of that. It's important to understand that there are exceptions to the Food Safety Modernization Act and the Preventive Controls for Animal Food rule. However, those exemptions tend to be relatively narrow. Here are some exemptions that may be applicable to facilities within South Carolina. First, facilities that only hold or only transport whole grains and seeds, such as grain elevators where there is no grinding or mixing of ingredients, are completely exempt from the Preventive Controls for Animal Food rule. That means that these facilities do not have to follow current good manufacturing practice requirements or have a food safety plan. However, in our experience, there just aren't many of these in South Carolina. Many grain elevators have a hammer mill or a roller mill that they use to grind or crack grains occasionally, or a small mixer that they might use from time to time to make base mixes or batches of feed for local producers. If any of these grinding or mixing activities occur, the facility is no longer exempt from the rule. Additionally, if a facility only stores unexposed packaged animal foods, such as what a warehouse might do, the facility must follow the current good manufacturing practice requirements, but does not need to have a food safety plan. However, if the facility has any exposed animal food, such as lick tubs without a cover or salt blocks, they are no longer considered to be exempt from this rule. The most common question that we get is about the size of facilities. Facilities that are considered very small or sell mostly to end users, such as mostly to farms, dairies, or poultry producers directly, still must follow the current good manufacturing practice requirements, and they still must prevent hazards from being present in any finished product, but they do not need to have a written food safety plan. In order to be one of these qualified facilities that's exempt from having a written food safety plan, the facility is obligated to send a biannual attestation to FDA. Form 3942B is the form that they should fill out, and it will state that they are qualified due to their business size. If this form is not filed biannually, the facility is expected to comply with all parts of the Preventive Control for Animal Food rule and therefore must have a written food safety plan. Again, not complying with any part of the Food Safety Modernization Act is considered to be a prohibited act. Ignorance is not bliss. We could compare this to the expectation of speeding on a highway. If you get pulled over for driving 75 miles per hour in a 55 mile per hour zone, but say that you didn't know the speed limit was that slow, you're still likely to get a ticket. When you drive a vehicle on state or federal roadways, you're obligated to follow the rules. Likewise, when you manufacture food for humans or animals, you're obligated to comply with the pertinent food safety laws, such as the Preventive Controls for Animal Food rule, even if you're a small facility and don't know much about them. The intent of this video series is to help facilities like you understand your obligations and how to comply with these different rules. That said, we understand that it is sometimes confusing to understand, what do I have to do, what's recommended, and what are some ways that I could comply. This table is a summary of the types of activities that we frequently observe at facilities in South Carolina and the obligations of those facilities to follow different requirements of the Preventive Controls for Animal Food rule. If a facility only stores grains and oilseeds, such as a grain elevator, they are exempt from the entire Preventive Controls for Animal Food rule. That means they do not need to follow current good manufacturing practice requirements, they do not need to have a written food safety plan, they do not need to identify and control hazards, nor do they need to file an annual attestation regarding business size. Facilities that only store packaged animal food may use the warehouse exemption, in which case they would comply with the current good manufacturing practice requirements, but do not have to have a written food safety plan or other components. The next two are related. If a facility processes animal food, such as grinding grains, mixing 2 or more ingredients together, or even an activity such as dehydrating alfalfa, then it must follow the current good manufacturing practice requirements as well as address hazards in the animal food. How it addresses these hazards, however, depends upon the size of the facility. If the facility's annual animal food sold is valued at less than $2.5 million, or if the annual animal food sold is less than $500,000 and the majority of that food is sold directly to end users, such as ranches, farms, poultry facilities, etc., then the facility does not have to have a written food safety plan. However, they still must identify and control hazards and file a biannual attestation regarding their business size. Because of these two required components, many of our South Carolina feed mills have decided that it's just easier to have a food safety plan, like those facilities that process food and have more than $2.5 million in value of animal food that's manufactured, processed, packed, or held annually. If you have additional questions regarding the Food Safety Modernization Act or the Preventive Controls for Animal Food rule, including if FSMA impacts you, and if so, which parts do you need to comply with, please reach out to us at the South Carolina Department of Agriculture. Our contact information is listed here.